Hi, I'm Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. This is this week's issue of the Libertarian Angle, the show that brings you the libertarian perspective on what's going on in the world. I'm joined by my co-host, Richard Ebeling, who teaches economics at the Citadel. Richard, welcome back for another week of the Libertarian Angle.
It's always a pleasure to be with our listeners, our viewers, and you too.
Yeah, it's real funny, Richard. Don't give up your day job. Hey, I thought we would discuss the big debate, the second debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Of course, from a libertarian standpoint, there isn't a whole lot to get excited about in that debate. I mean, I just found the whole thing to be absolutely and totally ridiculous, Richard. Why don't I give you a chance to go first this week? Give me your overall analysis of the debate, and then I'll weigh in and tell you what I thought about it.
Well, I'll just start by saying that American politics often sinks to low levels because, let's remember, we're dealing with politicians. But I watched the second debate, and there was a vulgar corruption to which the process has now sunk that is, at least in my lifetime, unique. There's no substance, no issues. It's all a matter of personalities and attempting to demonstrate that the other is contemptible and corrupt and a vicious, evil person. And therefore, on that basis, their vicious, evil, and corrupt nature is so worse than mine that therefore you should elect me. This is guttural politics of the worst sort. It has nothing to do with principle, ideology, policy. And I just found it absolutely deplorable and disgusting. And it has to be pretty deplorable and disgusting for me to say that because I've long considered politics in general to be deplorable and disgusting. So in other words, this is like reaching a new low. It's like I would say, can it sink any lower? Yes, it can. It can.
Yeah, it's like, well, we used to say, things can't get worse, like during the Clinton administration or whatever, and things continue to get worse.
And it did. And then, of course, when they finally got onto issues, whether it be Obamacare, foreign policy, clearly, at least for anyone who approaches these things from at least believing in or being knowledgeable about the libertarian or the classical liberal or free market perspective, is that both of them were once again offering merely variations on the same thing. Hillary is saying we have to save Obamacare. Oh, there have been pimples and warts and bumps along the way, but it's basically good and it's helping people, and we want to preserve it because this is the role of government in society, to help those who need the political helping hand. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. On the other hand, what does Trump say? He says we have to throw out Obamacare, and he uses occasionally even proper rhetoric. What is the solution to health care? Competition. I'm not going to disagree with that. But what does he then follow up with? And then this competition will be huge. It'll be great. It'll be wonderful. And some magical method that clearly he doesn't want to articulate, but involves government mandate. Preconditions will not affect premiums or accessibility. Everyone will have the health care that they need and deserve through somehow magic wand of political Donald, who will basically see this. Now, if we turn to the issue of foreign policy, and I know that's one that's particularly dear to your heart. What do we see here? Again, Hillary has come out as the aggressive and self-righteous military interventionist. We must be on the international stage. We must fight foes of what we stand for. Of course, what we stand for has a big question mark of ambiguity. then the idea, we will destroy ISIS. We will see that this is made a safe place for Americans and the rest of the world. And what does Trump reply with? You screwed this up. We wouldn't have Libya. We wouldn't have this except for you. And I will punch the hell out of ISIS. Now, how I'm going to do this? That's my secret plan in some hidden video from 15 years ago. Oh, in which I said some nasty remarks as well. So the foreign policy is no different. And then even to talk about international trade and jobs, both of them are economic interventionists who believe in various forms of government manipulation of imports and exports and protectionism. And notice the language they use, both of them. I will create jobs, as if the President of the United States, any more than a king of the past, to wave the wand and jobs come out of the ground like turnips. The fact is, jobs are created where they always have come from, through work, savings, and investment. And the entrepreneurial drive of however humble the businessman of the past or the present may be, who has a vision and idea of being willing to take risks and face the uncertainties of the future in terms of whether consumers will want the product, and uses his own savings or that of the savings of others that he's borrowed and promised to pay back, and to use it to employ himself and others in long-term investment projects that will have payoffs in the future, and enables us to have more goods and better goods and a greater variety of goods, and which the government then comes around and siphons off. How does it siphon off? By taxing part of that income and wealth, and then using the revenues that they have taken from us to then extract from the economy the real goods and services that the private sector have produced. That is where jobs, employment, production, opportunity, industry, and improvement come from. Not by a politician with this phony sense that they just wave the magic wand and all things will be possible if only you believe in me. This is the bankruptcy of the entire political process. Even if you looked at the questions that were given to them by the handful of people who spoke during this, quote, town hall meeting. How will you take care of my health care? How will you see that jobs are created? What will you do about this? The presumption is that government is the paternalistic supervisor and manager of your life, and you are the humble supplicant who hopes that the government will take care of you and provide you, and you're merely asking how they will generously and benevolently do it for you, because you can't obviously handle these things yourself. If I can just make one comparison. Back when George Bush Sr. was running against Bill Clinton, they too had the version of that time of a town hall and was taking questions from the audience. Towards the end of it, someone got up in the audience and said to both Clinton and to Bush Sr., well, in voting for one of you, it's sort of like we're electing our national father, someone who's going to oversee and take care of us. How do you see what you're going to do for us, the people? Notice this mentality. I'm a permanent adolescent. I'm a toddler, and I need government to take my hand and guide me through life because I can't get an education. I can't get a job. I can't plan my medical care. I can't decide what to do about my retirement. Oh, my God, Daddy, don't let go. Don't let go. This is the corrupt bankruptcy, not of these disgusting two politicians who represent as personalities and actors the most despicable that have come up on the stage in recent times. But this pathetic attitude among too many of our fellow citizens that they cannot imagine everyday life, great and small, the mundane and the profound of the affairs of their doings without government managing, supervising, directing, controlling, providing, subsidizing, protecting. In other words, the permanent national daddy who takes care of all of us. That is the terrible dilemma that we've got. And not just we have two lousy candidates, but the psychology, the mentality, and the culture that we now have with too many of our fellow Americans. This suggests that we have a slightly uphill battle still before us, Jacob.
Well, to confirm your point about the paternalism, I didn't watch the entire debate. Just couldn't stomach it. But I read in the paper that somebody in the audience actually said, "We are your children, and what are you going to do for us?" I mean, it's just phenomenal, this mindset. And everybody in that room, I suspect, was a statist, Richard. They believe in the welfare state. They believe in the warfare state. Clearly, the moderators fall within this overall welfare-warfare paradigm. The two candidates, of course, do.
Anderson Cooper? I'm shocked.
But notice, not one single libertarian question in all this. I mean, they all assume the parameters. You see, I call it the statist box, that they're all inside the statist box. And the questioners, the ones that they carefully selected to ask the questions, the audience, the moderators, they're all sitting there within their statist box and all embroiled with the problems that statism produces. And so they're fighting over, well, what are you going to do about this statist problem? And what are you going to do about this statist problem? And they cannot conceive of the fact that their statist box is the root cause not only of this abysmal campaign and these abysmal candidates, but of all the woes. And so they don't see that it's their system itself that has given rise, first of all, to these two candidates. I mean, this is the worst of the worst. And Friedrich Hayek, the libertarian and Nobel Prize-winning economist, explained it in his great essay, Why the Worst Get on Top. That when you've got a totalitarian system or a system that orients toward totalitarianism, that you're going to have the very worst elements of society rising to the top. We're seeing the epitome of that with Clinton and Trump. And so what do they do in this debate? They spend the first 30 minutes talking about sex scandals. I mean, this to me epitomizes the whole thing. That here you have a country that's going bankrupt with out-of-control spending and debt, that is killing people in the Middle East for 25 continuous years, a drug war that is incarcerating untold numbers of people, including especially blacks and Hispanics, because it's such a racist war, the corruption of the tax system, the Federal Reserve. And they spend 30 minutes on some sex-related scandal of these two candidates, because that sells. Sex sells in the welfare warfare state. It's sort of like the bread and circuses. It's a variation of what the Romans would do. On healthcare, you're absolutely right. Look how the debate orients all around Obamacare. Not one of them would dare, including the moderators, would dare to say, well, maybe we shouldn't have any Medicare or Medicaid, which are the root cause of this crisis. Because, Richard, we all know that if Obamacare was repealed, which is what conservatives have long argued, there would still be a health care crisis, because there was a health care crisis that caused Obamacare. They caused it to be brought into existence. That health care crisis is rooted in Medicare, Medicaid, insurance regulation, the deduction on the income tax for businesses that have health care insurance for their workers, which totally distorted the market. But they can't think like that. And this is one of my regrets of them not having Gary Johnson in the debates. Now, you and I both know Johnson's not the epitome of consistent libertarianism, but he at least would have brought some libertarian-oriented discussion to these debates. You don't see any libertarianism in there. When they talked about foreign policy and the Muslims, and Trump was talking about, the Muslims are coming to get us and so forth. Not one time did anybody say what Ron Paul had said when he ran. Hey, they're over here trying to kill us because the U.S. national security establishment has been over there killing them for some 25 years. Bring the troops home. Even Trump wouldn't say that. As you point out, he talks about the debacle in Iraq and says, I didn't support this debacle. And Clinton says, well, I did, but I regret it. But then they both say, but we've got to keep intervening in the Middle East and, for the latest enemy. They don't understand that the root cause of the anti-American terrorism is the interventionism itself. And of course, the moderators don't go down that road. So they're all battling over which one's going to be the better manager of the welfare, warfare state way of life? Which one's going to be able to give out the largesse to their cronies on the welfare state side? Which one's going to be able to give the tax loopholes to their buddies? Which one is going to be able to kill more people in the Middle East? But in the meantime, which one's going to be able to run the NSA and spy on the American people and record their telephone conversations and monitor their emails? But what does this have to do with freedom? Notice that not one single time did anybody ask that question. How does all this orient toward a free and prosperous society in America?
Yeah, an element of this, if I can sort of take a tangent off this, is that why should it matter about the personal lives of these people? Contrast that with the marketplace. You and I and everyone else goes into the marketplace every day. We buy our shoes, our shirts, our pants. We go to the supermarket to buy our groceries. We go into an automobile dealership to buy a car. Do we care about the private life and the picadillos of any of the people who service in the marketplace? No, because it is a private affair involving an exchange. I don't care if the guy who sells me socks kicks his dog and argues with his wife each night. It would be nice if he didn't kick his dog because I like dogs. But that doesn't enter into the transaction. And there's ever other negative feedbacks to take care of him in that area of his life if he does occasionally kick his dog and is rude to his wife. But the market is anonymous. Our relationships are based upon mutual and voluntary trade in which each is concerned with one thing. How can I offer something to another that they value enough that they'll give me what they have that I want from them in trade? It doesn't matter what you do with your income. It doesn't matter how you live your life. The market is anonymous. We enter into these relationships when it mutually serves us, even on a periodic continuing basis. I talk to the same women at the checkout counter at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's every time I go there, about once a week. But the fact is, it doesn't matter if they're a good person, a bad person, whether they read or look at porn or make lewd comments. I wouldn't necessarily approve if they did those things, and I have my own moral standards in which I would consider that improper and bad behavior. But it doesn't affect us in the marketplace. But in the political arena, these rise to the surface because what you're electing is a personality who's supposed to manage the society, the economy, the political order. And now it's important what is behind the mask to judge whether this is a good person or a bad person. In the marketplace, we're concerned with others as means to our ends in a peaceful and honest and voluntary way. If I spend my income on economics books, the other person can spend their income on Harlequin mystery novel, romance novels, or go to a sports game, or do whatever they want, or go on to a crazy vacation that I would consider outlandish. It doesn't matter. But in politics, you're concerned with personalities and not services rendered. And since you're concerned with personalities, everything rises to the surface that is normally behind the scenes and is not everybody's business, even if what the person is doing is disgusting. Because as long as they don't bother you and they do it honestly and peacefully and non-fraudulently and non-aggressively, it may be bad behavior, but that's their problem. And the people around them who are affected by it, that's their concern to teach them nonviolent, non-coercive lessons to get their act together. But politics raises these people up, and we suddenly have to deal with everything in their closet that is most disgusting and, to be honest, intimate and irrelevant. That is the difference between the marketplace and the political arena.
Yeah, that's
one of the aspects of it.
That's a very interesting point. I think Trump's big weakness in this sex scandal thing is that he can't go in there and say, look, I screwed up, but look at my positions. Look how much better my positions would make America. I mean, suppose he wanted to bring all the troops home right now. Just bring them home. Stop killing people in the Middle East. Suppose he says, I'm going to end the war on drugs. I'm going to dismantle the welfare state. Then he could have said, look, I've engaged in boorish behavior. I really regret it. But look how much better off America's going to be if we adopt my principles, if you elect me president. He can't do that because his principles are the same as Hillary's. on trade.
Yes.
He believes in government-controlled trade. He wants to smash ISIS. I mean, it's just on and on that he's on the same page as her. So he's relegated to saying, well, okay, I have problems with this thing I said in this tape, and where's he left? He has no place to go. I mean, my feeling is, Richard, is that as long as a person hasn't engaged in criminal action like an assault against a woman, rape, or touching her and so forth, that when he engages in the type of boorish behavior of talking, locker room talk and stuff, that what really matters is not that part of his past, is what he stands for, what he wants to do for America in terms of orienting us toward a free and prosperous nation. And I mean, look at the bad things that people have done. Lyndon Johnson, I don't think he was any different from Donald Trump. This is a guy that talked like that. That had affairs while he was in office and so forth. John Kennedy wasn't exactly the paragon of morality when it came to women and hitting on women and so forth. These are Democrats. Bill Clinton, we already know about his picadillos and stuff. But that, to me, is of secondary importance, because I'm not concerned about getting a really moral, ethical manager of the welfare, warfare, state way of life. I want to dismantle the welfare, warfare, state way of life and leave a constitutionally limited government republic. And if that happens to be some guy who doesn't think very highly of certain things in life that I disapprove of, to me, what's more important is achieving that free society, not his personal past that I think he has to deal with, not me.
Right. I agree. See, that's the difference. If I may deal with the grocer because he gives me fresh fruits and vegetables that I'm interested in buying. But let us suppose that he follows certain lifestyle patterns that I disagree with in different settings. I don't have to belong to his social network. I don't have to participate in his hobbies or recreational activities. And those areas relevant for me, and choose not to in areas that have other realms of involvement in which I do not share his values, views, or ethical conduct of a non-coercive type here. That's different. I can separate them. In the political arena, you're hiring someone to run the state, and that becomes totally personalized because you can't pick and choose in the same way. The market is anonymous and private in vast areas of its interactive nature in institutional workings. The political process is not. You are electing a person to, under our present ideologies today, to basically managing the state. If the state was small, the way the classic liberal, the libertarian has as his ideal, would I care about what the President of the United States said in the White House locker room with his staff members? If I was there, I might find it distasteful. I might even feel called upon to personally say that I didn't agree with it. I felt that was not a proper way to think about other people in various settings. But it wouldn't matter. Is he upholding the Constitution of life, liberty, and property as defined as the federal responsibilities under the Constitution? But when he's involved in setting up programs, a hierarchy of imposed values and agendas on the American people, and when he has the power and authority to redistribute wealth, hand out favors, give protection, supply subsidies, manipulate things with political power for himself and those who keep him in office, personality then matters. And this, therefore, drags everything down to the personal rather than the conceptual and the intellectual.
Yeah, and look at some of the presidents. I don't know much of the personal history of some of these presidents, and I could be wrong, but Woodrow Wilson strikes me as the straight-laced guy as compared to Donald Trump. But look, he leads us into World War I and kills all these Americans for no reason at all, no good reason. Or you look at Franklin Roosevelt. He seems sort of straight-laced in that sense. I'm not really sure. But, I mean, he maneuvers the United States into World War II. And you've got Richard Nixon, who appears to be somewhat straight-laced. He's lying about Vietnam and bombing Cambodia. And I mean, right. So that's not really a test of the real test is, what do you stand for? What are you doing in terms of individual liberty? And as you point out, the Constitution, and to develop the right kind of framework for what government should be doing and not doing. And if they're doing that, then the fact that they're having affairs or whatever, I mean, you and I both agree that's not something really that's good in terms of moral values, adultery, and so forth. But from a libertarian standpoint, what matters to us is that free society. And if a president is there honoring the Constitution and we have a very limited government, I'm not really going to care from a personal standpoint how he's living his life. That's his business.
Yeah, I could be wrong about this, and maybe viewers and listeners will end up correcting me on some message that they leave. But I believe it was Grover Cleveland who was running for office, and his opponent, whose name I forget, was going to bring out the fact that he had a child out of wedlock. And rather than deny it, Grover Cleveland came forward and he says, yes, I had this affair years ago, and I realized that it was a mistake, but I had an obligation because of my actions. And I had taken care of, through some fund or a trust, both the woman whom I had an affair with and the financial needs of this child. And that ended the controversy. And then he just went on to campaign and dealt with the issues. And as a Democrat, if it was Grover Cleveland, who I believe it was, he was a laissez-faire free trade guy. That's what the Democratic Party was more oriented back then. And he got elected. It didn't matter. Yes, he had made a mistake when he was young. He explained it. He admitted it. He said that he had taken responsibility for his actions. What was important were the issues of the day to debate to determine who would be president of the United States.
Yeah, that's a great example. And in fact, I think it was Grover Cleveland. And then Cleveland's got that famous veto message where, I mean, it really goes to show you what Democrats once stood for. That the Texas farmers who were suffering drought conditions were asking Congress for federal aid. And Congress enacted it as like a $5,000 farm bill, which is a lot more money back then. And Grover Cleveland in his veto message says, absolutely not. In this country, it is the responsibility of people to support the government, but it is not the responsibility, not the role of the government to support the citizenry. And he vetoes that farm bill. I mean, that was the ideology. And so from my perspective, I'd much rather have a president with that philosophy, even if he's made some mistakes, adultery or out of wedlock children and so forth in his past. That to me is irrelevant. I think the American people took the right position in that thing. Says, okay, he screwed up, but here's what he stands for. He vetoes this farm bill. That to me is what really matters.
Yeah. And I would just mention talking about what Democrats stood for back then, is that during his presidency, there was an attempt by American settlers in Hawaii to undertake a coup and have the United States annex the Hawaiian Islands at that time. And Grover Cleveland refused to do it, saying that this was a trumped-up coup to deny the legitimate government, which was a monarchy, its power and independence in the Hawaiian Islands, and the U.S. would not intervene and annex it. So in other words, he was also a non-interventionist on foreign policy.
Yeah, I mean, that was the temper of the times, and compare that to what we see in the debate. Continued interventionism thousands of miles away. The drug war, which we didn't talk about today, but both of them are on the same page on that one. One of the funniest parts is when Hillary talked about the Russians coming in to influence our elections. I mean, give me a break. This is a government that has gotten involved in elections and governmental processes in countries all over the world with foreign aid and money and coups and interventions, invasions, occupations, assassinations. And now she's complaining that the Russians are doing the same thing that they've been doing. I mean, talk about hypocrisy, Richard.
That's like the famous scene in the old movie Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, where the prefect of police in Casablanca orders that Rick's Cafe be closed. And Rick says to the prefect of police, played by the actor Claude Rains. On what grounds are you doing this? I'm shocked to find out there's gambling going on here. And the croupier shows up and says to the prefect of police, "You're winning, sir." That's the hypocrisy of this.
It really is. It really is. Well, on that note, we'll wrap it up, Richard. We're about out of time. So enjoyed the visit as always.
Yes, and I want to thank once, as I always try to do, to thank our viewers and listeners for spending their time with us a little bit to talk about these issues.
Yeah, I want to thank you all too, and thank you for buying Richard's book. It's still ranked in the top 10 of Amazon's best-selling ebooks on economic theory. It's called Understanding Austrian Economics and Public Policy.
And Public Policy, Restoring Freedom and Prosperity.
Right, and yes. The accompanying video is called Understanding Austrian Economics.
It's called Introduction to Austrian Economics. He's having short-term memory loss, folks. Short-term memory loss, it's all over.
With promoters like me, you don't need any enemies. So, anyway, enjoy the visit, Richard. We'll see you all next week.
Take care. Bye-bye.